Welcome to Ex Machina. Join us as we explore the mysteries of this world. Cryptids, monsters, macabre tales, and horror stories abound. Could they be true? Are monsters real?
Good evening, folks, and thank you for joining us on another edition of Ex Machina. Joining us in the house tonight is Robbie Rip Rains, and he has a special guest joining him, Johnny from What's Really Out There. They are at this very moment about 20 minutes outside of LBL. Robbie, how's it going, man?
Going good, brother. How are you?
Not bad. Your video is not showing up on the screen, though.
Well, we've been trying.
Well, the audio is good, so you may just have to turn off your camera and just talk. You know, like I said, the audio is good, but we've got no video for you whatsoever.
Let's see. We'll stop it and see if we can start it again. See if that'll help.
Well, now it just shows the blank, but
did it unfreeze?
Went back to nothing. Went back to absolutely nothing.
Yeah, well,
at least when you turned off, it's got an icon there, but when you turn it back on, it just goes to a blank area.
Well, we can. It's showing. The camera's working on our end. We can see ourselves on our screen.
Weird. God knows, man. I can't explain the technology behind this. I wish Noah was around. I'd have him take a look at it, but he is unfortunately not here tonight. So, so as far as technical support goes, we're kind of on our own.
Well, we're here.
Why it says it's a clear hair.
We're not. Yeah,
you're still connected with me.
Yeah, we're not wolf turds yet.
Not yet, but give it time. So, what's the plan?
Do we have a plan, Johnny? Or we just playing it by ear so far?
Yeah, the plan is don't make a wolf turd.
Yeah,
that'll be a good plan.
Now we'll probably tomorrow. I think we're probably going to go and drive around. The trace is the road that goes around it, correct?
Yeah, it goes right up through the middle of it.
Yeah. We're probably going to hit that tomorrow and drive around. It was raining today when we came through, so we wanted to just get to the hotel, because we had one of the boxes in the back of the truck with all the equipment in it. So we wanted to get to the hotel and get it in so it didn't get rained on. So, and when we come and got all the bags and everything set up with the casting material and got all the camera equipment set up and everything. So we'll probably tomorrow go and maybe drive around, see if we can find a good place to get out and walk and see if we can find anything, just do some scouting. And Taylor and Tyler will be here on Friday afternoon, I think. Yeah. And once they get here, we'll definitely get some good video stuff set up. And hopefully, if everything works all right, and we'll find that out tomorrow. If we've got good service out there, you want to go ahead and hit them with a surprise what might happen?
Absolutely. If they've got good enough signal from inside LBL, then Saturday night they will be joining us live from deep inside LBL.
So y'all may get to see us become wolf turds. Who knows?
I'm really waiting for you guys to both point flashlights off camera, then disappear as I hear gunshots.
Well,
stand by. We're having technical difficulties.
Yeah.
So,
if you really want to put a dogman down, though, take that chair from your room and leave it out there.
Hey, that might be bait. You never know.
I don't want to alter his DNA.
Oh, or kill it outright. Release the bubonic plague upon LBL.
But apparently there's some kind of Paracon or something that's going on. There's another group that's going to be down there.
There's about 3 different groups.
Yeah, so we're going to have to.
I know the guys from Sawdust Beast. They're doing their big annual meet and greet down there. I was hoping to at least swing by and talk to everybody. Cam Buckner's going to be there. There'll be a bunch of other people.
Cam down there?
Yeah, Cam's going to be there at their meet and greet. I don't know. I'd have to get you the specifics on which campground they're going to be out, but I'm
Well,
sure they'd love to see
why
you.
don't you give Cam my number and tell Cam to give me a call or a text message. Maybe me and Cam can meet up while we're down here.
Okay, I will do that after. Well, he'll be in bed. He goes to bed with the chickens, but I'll text him and give him your number and tell him you're in LBL now.
Yeah, I think our buddy Bobby Dahl, he's down here or going to be down here.
Cool.
We've been on his show before.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I really wanted to be there, but I've got family matters to attend here at the homestead.
Yeah, I don't. I just saw Greg put a message on Facebook. His mom's in the hospital, so everybody pray for Greg Ogle's mom. I don't know if Greg's going to make it or not, because I just saw that she's had emergency surgery and something didn't work, and they're going to have to try something else. So everybody pray for Greg's mom.
Definitely. I just dropped a link in the chat, folks. If you guys have noticed, I'm sure you saw the link pop up. But that is the link to Amazon for the new book release. It just dropped yesterday. Actually, dropped on the 1st. But it is available in Kindle and print. It's called Murder in Moon Valley. I'm sorry, not Murder in Moon Valley. That was the working title. It's called Death Stalks Moon Valley. And it is a collection of short stories, including Demons Part 1 and 2, which are both Wild Hunt based, primarily around Margolin. So if you guys are jonesing for some new stuff to read, hope you guys will check that out. It's doing pretty well on Amazon, but I would really love to see it get pushed to #1 in its category, because that's a really big feather in the cap. Also, the other day I was looking at some of the other books and noticed that a few of the books are now rapidly approaching 1,000 reviews, which is huge. Folks, the reviews, you leave a review, even if it's just Reddit, liked it, that kind of thing. Any review you leave helps the algorithm. Amazon does not even start pushing the book until it hits 50 reviews, and it doesn't include it in the newsletter until it hits 100.
Yeah, and there's some good stories in that book too.
I'm pretty happy with it. I like the way those stories came out, and was talking to Cam today, and he's going to start releasing the short stories from that as individual podcasts.
Yeah, that'd be good, because there's some good stories in that book. There's some stories in that book that you and I talked about that could possibly turn into spinoff series, in my opinion, anyway.
Well, there's some of those characters that are introduced in there are definitely going to start appearing in other books. I introduced some new characters. I set up introductions for other characters. So some of these new characters that are introduced in these books are definitely going to be appearing in the rest of the series. So look for them to show up, and you'll definitely be seeing familiar as well as some new faces coming up. Kay Bauer says, Robbie, my question moved too fast. What's your LBL loadout?
Well, Johnny and I talked about it, and there's a lot of out and back about rifles and stuff like that. So we left the big girls at home, but I've got my 5.7 rock. I've got my dagger, and you got your 45.
I got my 17.
His 17. And, of course, we've got the bounty, the gunner's mate, the dew claw, and Johnny's got his hatchet. So we're not.
Scallywag is represented.
Yes, we are not unarmed by any stretch of the imagination.
Oh, and don't forget the Fox pepper spray.
Oh, yes, and Johnny's brought some pepper spray, too.
That way, we can identify who you are by the scat smelling spicy.
Yep, it'll be spicy.
I'll be spicy.
You see a very pissed off looking dogman with bloodshot eyes grumbling as it walks away.
Yeah.
I'm not hitting him with a rake mace. I'm using Fox. Using the good stuff.
Be like, that was a spicy meatball.
Yeah, I hate it when they're spicy. Kind of like the time I was cutting vegetables on the table, and I had one on my cut board. I was cutting some cayenne pepper, and I dropped a piece, and before it even hit the ground, hardly snapped it out of the air, and immediately went blah, and spit it right back and
Oh,
walked away,
Harley.
giving me the stink eye. Like, what are you trying to do? Trying to freaking kill me or something?
Oh, Harley the Wonder Mutt.
Yep, he's a goofball. So, as for what we're actually going to be talking about tonight, we are going to be discussing, known Bigfoot behaviors. What do we suspect? What do we know? What are the theories behind them? And I'm kind of excited to get Johnny in on this conversation because I think he's going to bring a new dynamic to this, a new bit of insight, and we'll get his take on things. And I think it's going to be a lot of fun, folks. So thank you guys for joining us, and make sure to hit that like, share, and subscribe. The algorithm is showing that we are only about 40% of the people that are watching the videos are not subscribed to the channel. So we would sure appreciate your subscription to the channel. It helps us continue to grow and help get our content further out there. So please just take a moment and hit that like, share, and subscribe. Doesn't cost you anything. But if you do want to support the channel, you can join the channel on a couple of different levels, and we sure appreciate it. So thank you guys very much.
Oh, so let's get into it.
Heck yeah. Well, I thought the first one we would discuss is actually the behavior that I mentioned in a book that actually kind of led to me and you getting to know each other, Robbie. Tree
Yep.
peeking.
Yep. Because that's something that I've witnessed personally. And that is at least from my understanding, that is a known primate behavior, that a lot of primates do that. That kind of that swaying back and forth. And Johnny and I actually saw one do that, or what we believe was one, up behind that rock. Johnny, you want to? I've told the story, but you want to tell it from your perspective, since they've heard it from my perspective a couple of times. So,
yeah, that was the first time he was peeking behind a tree, and then next thing you know, it's moving from left to right, peeking over a giant boulder. And I talked to my buddy that lives a quarter mile from this place. He walks that trail all the time. He told me those boulders are ginormous. He said they're 7-8 foot tall. So whatever it was peeking over a 7 or 8 foot tall boulder. And that's the time me and Robbie both witnessed it.
Well, I wish we had video of you guys so you could, maybe demonstrate how it moved. But I think we've all heard stories from some of the encounters of how you'll have a tree and it will kind of lean out and then duck back and lean out. I've actually done that while playing paintball. I mean, it's not that dissimilar. Just trying to stay concealed while you're getting a view of what's out there. But when you combine that with what they refer to as swaying, how they'll just kind of weave back and forth, it makes me wonder if might be a little bit more to it. If it's something they do when they're nervous, if it's something, it's a threat display. What do you guys think?
I want to personally, I want to lean towards like maybe a curiosity type thing. It's just, you think about, when we're standing there talking, just, you kind of constantly shifting your weight back and forth from foot to foot. And it's just kind of a natural thing that you don't really think that you're doing. But I just wonder if when they're watching us and they're just curious and they're just kind of getting into it, it's just that kind of, and they're always going to be behind something, because most of the time they're not standing out there in the middle of the or in the open watching. I think it's just one of those things that, when they really get curious or watching us, it just kind of starts happening.
Johnny, what do you think?
Well, I definitely got the curiosity, and they're using cover. But you hear popular opinion, a lot of people mentioning maybe they're on the spectrum a little bit.
Could be.
Because back when I was a kid in school, it didn't have a name back then. It was just that fidgety kid that couldn't sit still, but they'd sit there and sway in their table and drive you nuts.
Yeah. And we've talked about that before, DA, how it seems like they're not connected, but drawn to people or to kids that are on the spectrum. So maybe that's, maybe that's kind of a tie-in.
Maybe it's like a connection, maybe like empathy.
I mean, we say this all the time. There's no right or wrong answer because nobody
Right.
knows for sure. It's all, speculation on our part. But I think those are really legit.
Well, the swaying is also primate behavior. I've seen chimps do it
Yeah.
at the zoo.
Oh yeah.
They'll
Well,
stand and look at you and kind of sway back and forth from side to side a little bit.
Yeah, I think that might be for some of the curiosity. So it may be a combination of several things that's causing it. So
Mark Napier asked, he said, "What's the deal with Bigfoot and glass?" We know they could easily smash glass, but they don't, or that they don't that we know of.
I don't know. I mean, you think about most animals could do that, but there's not a whole lot of that I know of things, or because any kind of bear or other than going into a car door or something because they're looking for food, you don't really hear of lions or mountain lions or any big predator like that going through that. So maybe it's just kind of that fear of the unknown, maybe that they know there's something
not sure
there.
why it's clear and they can't, and they can still touch it. Maybe it's a confusion issue.
I mean, just a shot in the dark on that, but maybe it's something like that. It's just that I don't know exactly what this is. I mean, you think about when you see something that you don't know anything about, your first inclination is almost to reach out and touch it. Then you're like, oh, I don't know if I'm gonna do that or not. So maybe it's something like that.
I'm with that.
Very well could be.
Part.
What's that, Johnny? Sorry.
I just said I'm with that thought process. Like it's maybe they're intrigued with it.
Could be. It could be they're just trying to figure out what it is. I wonder what effect a mirror would have in place of the glass.
Well, there was those people that were using a mirror in a game cam. If you remember that, they were bouncing the images, and that's how they were capturing pictures.
Yeah, I remember that. I'd almost forgotten about that. I would say mirrors, they probably wouldn't understand what it is. I mean, I've had dogs just go absolutely ape shit when they see themselves in a mirror. So, I just, I can't imagine they would understand what it is.
Yeah, I think it's that kind of. I'm not sure what this is, and that could play into some of the swaying too. Because, like I said, my encounter, it was looking at me through that screen door or a storm glass door, and it was swaying. Maybe it thought that I couldn't see it.
Maybe. Something else that I was always kind of concerned me about,
just didn't realize
the habit of them peeking in through glass, through in windows, especially at children, is that predatory behavior or are they just curious?
Well, obviously, I think, you've asked me that question before, and I've said, I honestly think if it was predatory and it wanted to come in, there was nothing that was going to stop that thing from coming in.
Well, there are stories of them reaching through windows.
Yeah. So, the Legend of Boggy Creek. I mean, it reached through a window on that guy. Was it Bobby Ford?
Yeah.
Reached through the window. So, I mean, but the window was open too, though. So I don't know if
it stuck its hand through the screen or if there was no screen. But that is Arkansas. So.
Yes, there's something wrong with the video. We've only got audio. I see a couple people in the chat asking. For whatever reason, our audio is great, but our video is not.
Unfortunately, it is what it is. We'll just have to deal with it. was going to say something else. Yeah, yeah. When they're looking in windows like that, I've often wondered. Really, I don't really think it's just curiosity. It's almost like they're trying to figure us out. But at the same time, is that because they're curious about how we live, or are they waiting for an opportunity to snag somebody?
Well, and something that I've kind of thought of, we look at them and we're curious about them because they look so much like us.
Mhm.
What if it's the same for them? They're looking at us and they're curious about us because we look so much to them like they do.
Right.
They almost kind of recognize us and they're trying to figure out, is that what am I looking at? I mean, and I'm talking like the Patty Gimlin version, things like that. I'm not talking about Patty Gimlin. Patty, you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Words are not forming right now, but obviously Goodway or any of those kind, they're not, I don't think, trying to figure that out because of their nature, but maybe it's a curiosity on their part that they're just trying to figure us out as much as we're trying to figure them out.
Don Donaldson says could be both.
Yeah, I mean, and Mark's talking about asking Fred, but that there again, that's that different species. You start getting up towards that area, those are not the same type of Bigfoot that we're going to encounter around these areas.
Yeah,
just like
the ones up in Alaska are definitely more aggressive than the ones we have down here. But there are still plenty of stories from down in the lower 48 of people that have had violent encounters. Some of them from right where you guys are at.
Yep. Thanks for reminding me, DA.
There's a Bigfoot story from LBL in the southern part of LBL where a group of Cub Scouts on a hike were chased back to their van by what they thought was a Bigfoot.
Cool.
Well, we might get chased back to the truck, Johnny.
Yep. Well, I can't run that good, so
Me either.
I got hot sauce.
Try and taste bad at that point.
Exactly.
Yeah. But stuff like that's kind of fun to sit there and kind of brainstorm about what the reason behind any of this stuff is, because you don't know, and it's fun to just think about all the different reasons and possibilities, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Well, your pepper spray idea poses an interesting bit of thought. Robbie, how many times have you sprayed a guy and it had no effect?
Probably more times than I care to think about.
I've sprayed people a number of times and they were either too drunk or too high to feel it. And in order for us to be certified as law enforcement officers to even carry it, you have to demonstrate the ability to fight through it after being sprayed. So will it slow that thing down? Will it be a deterrent, or will it just piss it off?
Yeah, I mean, go ahead, Johnny.
At that point, I don't care. It's it's the last line of defense. I've been hit with fox, and it ain't like the saber red.
Yeah, the fox is way worse than that saber red.
45 minutes, you were taken out of the fight for 45 minutes.
That fox is 5.3 million Scoville heat units. That's what we carried when I worked in the jail. And that stuff is nasty. You can spray it in a styrofoam cup and it'll eat the bottom out of the cup.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I know what it tastes like, though.
Get you a styrofoam cup and spray some in the bottom of it. Watch how fast it just scorches right through it. It just dissolves that styrofoam.
Well,
that
David,
we're nasty stuff.
David, we're actually down here looking for the beast of LBL. That was the main purpose of us coming down here, was for that part.
Larry Berlin's had a good question, a good comment. He says, DA, does the glass interfere with their sense of smell? That could very well be. It might be perplexing them because they could see something, but they just don't smell it.
Hey, that's a valid theory.
Sounds good to me.
John Wayne says is checking every day for a new book. Well, the new book of short stories is out. It's been out a couple of days.
So what's some other behaviors?
I'll drop that link again. Hold on. That link is way too long. There we go.
Better save some for these 3 or 4 friends you don't see.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah.
You know, I think the last thing I would want to do is piss one off. But I'm telling you, if they're anything as sensitive as people, and you can get a back shot on one, spray them right in the butthole.
Yeah.
See a dog man looking like he's got worms scooting his ass across the forest floor.
I'll try to get a video if that happens.
Yeah, I think it'll be a little preoccupied and not concerned about eating you.
And that would be the point.
Exactly. I can imagine the noise it'd be making too. Get the whole hype. So there you go. If you have the opportunity, you have to do a scientific test to see the effect of fox pepper spray on a dog man's bunghole.
I'll take one for the team.
Yeah, you've got to get that on video.
Oh yeah.
Thermal. It'd be even better on thermal.
Yeah. Look, you left a trail.
Oh, that is so wrong. Funny, but wrong.
Dr. 45 120 Sharp says, is that going to end up in the book?
Yeah, I would definitely say that's probably going to show up at some point.
Well, if shooting Bigfoot in the gonads with a flare gun ends up in the book, I would assume that would end up in the book.
That's going to have to be a Margolin thing. Like, hey, give me that pepper spray. Let's see what he does.
Oh, Margolin. Leave it to
Anybody
him.
would do it, it would be Margolin. Dogman yelling, my biscuits are burning. Oh, that's funny.
I can hear Margolin saying that.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
While he's wearing a bracelet sock shirt.
Yep.
Oh, we're already derailing. That's bad news. But we are at the bottom of the hour. We are at the bottom of the first half hour. You know what? Since we are at the bottom of the bottom of the first hour, let's hear a little word from Doc while we try to reorganize our thoughts and get our ass back on topic. But we'll hear a little bit from Doc over at Dark Angel Medical.
Hey everybody, this is Kerry Pocket Doc Davis from Dark Angel Medical, and you are listening to DA Ex Machina with DA Roberts. You may recognize me or some of my products from Dark Angel Medical in some of the Apex Predator, Lakeview Man, and Wild Hunt books, and you can get those products at www.darkangelmedical.com, along with training classes on how to use those products and save a life. Shoot us an email at info@darkangelmedical.com and be the difference. Pocket Doc Davis from Dark Angel Medical, and you are listening.
Now we're picking up your audio again. Oh, and folks, if you check out Dark Angel Medical, don't forget to use discount code Cryptid25 for 25% off your order. That discount code will no longer be in effect after the end of April. The code will be changing because of cost increases. So take advantage of that 25% off while you can, and let them know over Dark Angel that we sent you.
Yep, go help the little fella out.
Exactly. Let him know we love him. I have another behavior that I thought about, and it involves the houses too. And this is something that my wife and I experienced firsthand up in the Smokies. When something slaps the side of the house.
Yep, I've heard that many times. Which, matter of fact, Brian was talking about that when he was doing his stuff, and then he was out sick for a while.
Mm-hmm.
They started tossing stuff in and slapping the sides of houses and looking in windows. So that's a very well documented behavior. And Miss Naomi's had that happen to her several times, right?
Mm-hmm. I know several people that have had it happen to them right in their residence, not staying in a cabin in the woods. It happened at their house, and that's an experience that will certainly get your attention. My wife got up to go to the bathroom at that cabin in the Smokies, and heard something growl at her from outside the bathroom window, and she thought it was probably just a bear. And before she could get back to bed, something slapped the side of the cabin 3 times. And that'll bring you up out of bed in a hell of a hurry. And I never did see anything out there, but that is the same side of the house where I got that track though. But
Yep.
I've often wondered what that slap means. Do you think it's them just playing pranks on somebody in the house, or do you think they're trying to lure you out?
Well, I mean, and like I told you, we listened to Lakeview Man again on the way up here, and you talk about that in there when Clark and Amanda are in the cabin when they're waiting on Conrad to come in. It smacks the side of the house, trying to get him to come out of the house, set a trap for him.
Yep.
I think
That's what I think it's for.
Depending on which strain you're talking about. I mean, and I guess it could be any of them that could do it just to see what's going to happen. I mean, kind of like smacking a hornet's nest just to see what happens.
Yeah.
Or kicking an ant hill.
Personally, I think it's an attempt to get you to come out of the house. It could be them just, because they're bored. Could be them just messing with it, but it does seem to happen a lot when women are alone at the house, and it seems to happen more. The one that struck our cabin down out by Gatlinburg, that one I was there. I mean, I heard it. It wasn't like my wife was there by herself, but she was in the bathroom by herself. I was in the other room, and that's when she heard it growl right outside the bathroom window. And that bathroom window was pretty high off the ground. It was probably, I don't know, 12, 15 feet up, because the cabin was built right on the side of a bluff, about a 45-degree angle. So whatever was out there had to be pretty damn tall to be outside that window. And then where it smacked the wall was also probably 12 to 15 feet off the ground.
Didn't you say that was the same day that y'all were playing pool and messing around with the pool balls, and it was making that sound that you said sounded kind of like?
And I'd also the night before been out on the deck doing that tongue pop. My wife has forbid me from doing that when we go on vacation again. She's like, if you guys want to go do that in the woods, you guys go do that. But if we're camping somewhere, you are not doing that. You are not drawing those things back in.
Yeah. I imagine Miss Annette wasn't too happy with you on that one,
no,
was she?
she was not. And she was always been the one that was kind of on the fence about stuff. I mean, I told her things that I'd seen and things I'd observed and had happened while I was out deer hunting and stuff. And it's not like she didn't believe me. It's just nothing had ever happened to her. But that morning when I went out and found that track, I didn't say, honey, I found a track. I'm like, honey, come here and tell me what you see. And she looks down off the top balcony and looks down and sees that track. And she goes, oh my God, that's a footprint. I'm like, yeah. She goes, that's not like bear tracks. That's a footprint. I can see the toes. She could see the toes from 20 feet up.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that was probably one of the best. I wish, just like the one we saw out in Joe Ball. I mean, those are some of the best tracks I think I've ever seen. Both either one of those. Now,
I really wish I could have cast that track, but it was on such a freaking incline. And this is the picture of the track I took, folks.
This is the one.
I remember seeing that picture.
Well, that's the one we got at the, because he got the one with the business card on it. That's the one we kind of measured out with Tyler's shoe. Because Tyler, what was it, 18?
Something like that. Crazy.
Yeah. Tyler wears a size 18 shoe, and we put 3 business cards beside it, and 3 business cards covered up Tyler's footprint or his shoe, which was an 18, and that track is bigger than what Tyler's shoe was.
That's a big track.
So
it was pretty deep too. And that soil was rocky.
Yeah.
John Wingate says, heard those wood knocks here in Washington State for years. Didn't like being growled at. I don't blame you.
No. Well, we've never heard wood knocks when we've been, but we've heard a lot of stuff that could have been like them mimicking other animals that we both looked at each other like, what in the world? And
nope, I heard wood knocks just out north of Springfield, out at Fellows Lake.
Yeah, well, didn't you say
close to town?
Didn't you say your son has heard stuff out there before? That
well, my oldest son, the one who's getting married, him and his friend went out to a public use area out north of Springfield. It's about an hour north of Springfield. It's out in Pulaski County. And they went out to stargaze, took a telescope and stuff out there because they wanted to get away from the light pollution. So they set up in the parking lot and they kept hearing tree knocks, and they had all the lights off. So they would, their night vision would be good for looking at the stars. And while they were sitting there, he said he heard tree knocks from across the road from where they were at. And then pretty soon he heard them behind him. And then from one side and then the other. And he said they were getting steadily closer. He said they finally got out of there, and he was asking me about what it was. I'm like, you heard tree knocks? He goes, yeah, it sounded like somebody taking a couple of baseball bats and smacking them together. Only he didn't call them tree knocks. He said it heard somebody, like he thought somebody was out there messing with him. And I'm like, no, that's pretty typical Bigfoot behavior. How far were you from the nearest town? He goes, oh, God, we were probably 10, 15 miles from a town.
Yep. Well, and two, like, I hadn't heard of it, but Johnny's heard tree or limb breaks, tree breaks, whatever you want to call it. He's heard that up there too, where they, snapping limbs and stuff like that and shaking trees.
So, Lenora Wilson says the slapping is a chimpanzee behavior. They use it as a gesture to ward off intruders, so they must take us as intruders. That's entirely possible. Well, we also think that what people take as tree knocks could, be a number of things. That it's not necessarily just wood on wood. I've heard of a couple of guys who heard knocks from an area and then found large chunks of antler. I've heard people that have found bone that looked like they'd been beaten together. I've heard of people that have found where trees had been struck by something. I also believe that, some of them are making it with their mouth. It depends on what it is. And it could very well possibly be like a gorilla slapping its chest. All of these can be heard over distance, but I think the tongue click thing is not only used for location, but probably echolocation below ground.
Yep.
At least that's our theory. And
I don't know if I've told you this part, DA, but we were getting ready to record one time, and this is before Steve had to start going and doing some other things. But we were actually right after me, you and Noah had that show, when we started talking about that and started kind of developing that theory. We were all three talking about it, and Steve told me and Johnny. He said, "Oh no," he said, "they do tongue clicks." He said, "I heard one." He said it was 20 feet above him on that hill, I think.
Yeah.
He said he said it was not wood on wood. He said, I know what this was. He said it was a tongue click. He said it was loud, it was deep. He said, and it was on a hill about 20 feet above us. He said it was a tongue click. So
just kind of lends credence to what we were already thinking.
Yeah. Steve said he will die on that hill as far as believing us and going to bat for us on that. He said, I've heard it. He said, I've heard wood knocks. And Steve's been all over the place, out in the woods, deep in the woods looking for these things. He said, I've heard tree knocks. I've heard rocks click together. He said, I've heard everything. He said, but this was a tongue click. And he said, it was done by something massive. I can't remember. Do you remember where he said?
I've heard those wood knock
Tennessee
sounds in
somewhere,
the woods
maybe.
before, and before I
I
knew
think it's in,
what I was listening for, I always just assumed it was a camper somewhere, like splitting wood. It didn't really even occur to me that I was far enough out in the Mark Twain. There shouldn't be anybody else out there. Uh, but when you don't really understand what these things are, what these behaviors are, your mind will make excuses for all kinds of weird stuff. I mean, I didn't know what those tree knocks were when I was young, but now I'm a little more vigilant when it comes to hearing stuff like that.
well, it's like tree structures. I know we're probably gonna get into that a little bit later,
Oh,
but
absolutely.
I can't tell you how many times I've seen stuff that looks like that when I've been out in the woods before I really, I mean, I've always obviously believed in this, but I didn't know, back when all three of us were younger, you didn't have the internet, you didn't have all these pictures and all these, all this wealth of knowledge and pictures that you could go look at. You see stuff out there and you don't know what you're looking at that point, but I can now seeing pictures that people have put up of this stuff. I've seen stuff like that in the woods when I was younger.
I have too, and I didn't used to put a lot of stock in tree formations or stick formations because a lot of times I would look at pictures that people posted and go, "Ah, it's just deadfall." And I was pretty dismissive of the whole idea. But then I started seeing some of the ones, for myself that were trees, good sized saplings that had been arched over, and left attached to the ground so they would grow that way. Um, there's just no real logical explanation for that. I mean, what person is going out through the woods making these freaking tree bend archways, and why?
Well, when we were at Joe Ball, while you were sitting down there at the Rock watching our back, when me and Noah walked up there, we saw some things that could have possibly been tree structures. Noah and I, neither one could look at it and say, somebody did that. And I said, that's not snow. Obviously, it hadn't snowed up there, so it's not snow load. Noah said there
Yeah, we
hadn't been
didn't
any
get
really
much
big
snow this
storm.
year. There's no
Yeah,
way
and he said there had
we
been
got
no.
snow load here because we didn't get hardly any.
Yeah, so I don't. You see things, and you're like, okay, I can't reason this out to say this was this. There's no track showing it's. You could say it's heavy machinery. You can rule out the weather because of this factor or that factor. But we saw some stuff up there that possibly could have been that. So I mean, but when you don't have that access beforehand to see it, and you see these things, like you said, your mind will just, well, that's this. It has to be that.
Well, one of the things I've noticed, I've talked to a lot of researchers from here in the Midwest, including one of them that's in the chat tonight. I won't say his name because I may not have permission to, but I've talked to several researchers from here in Missouri that have noticed that some of these tree formations, especially the bows, seem to occur near large sections with medicinal plants.
Yeah.
And I was out in the woods near Bennett Springs. In fact, if you saw some of the stuff I just posted on Facebook the other day, I'd taken a bunch of pictures down at Moon Valley. Well, I just drove down to Moon Valley and then walked some of the trails down by Bennett Springs. I was just looking around, and I found a section in the woods. I got off trail a little bit, and I found a section in the woods that was a clearing that was just loaded with cedar saplings. But the funny thing is there wasn't a cedar tree around anywhere.
That's interesting.
Every one of these cedar trees were between 1.5 to 2 feet tall, and there was not a cedar tree around anywhere.
So they were brought in.
Mm-hmm. And I was far enough off the beaten path. It would have been odd for conservation to have come out there to plant trees, and it just looked like they had just sprung up naturally. It really did. The ground wasn't disturbed. None of them had been very big. Were very big. So obviously, it was like conservation will bring in saplings and plant them. The ground wasn't disturbed. There was still plenty of leaf litter on the ground. I looked at the base of the trees. It just looked like they'd cropped up from seeds, and which is really weird because again, there were no trees around that were the same type.
Huh.
Most of the trees around were either oak or walnut.
Well, see, but that's the whole thing. You see stuff like that, and if you're somebody who really doesn't get into this, doesn't believe it, you're like, well, that's weird. Why would somebody come plant those right there?
Kay Bauer says only Bigfoot would find medicinal purposes for a cedar tree. Not true. The Native Americans use them a lot. The bark is healthy, especially spruce trees. White spruce is the bark from white spruce can be chewed and it works as a natural pain reliever. But the main component you need to remember about cedar is any intelligent animal. And I know if I had to build a lean-to or something out in the woods, I would make my bedding layer out of cedar because it repels bugs.
Yep.
And, cedar trees could be used by them for quick shelters. Yeah, those are, that's something they taught me when I was in Cub Scouts years ago, that if you're ever stuck out in the woods, you can get in underneath a cedar tree and basically it's like a tent. You can be used for emergency shelters. Plus, you can tear off some of the branches and use those as bed lining. If they're making nests like a lot of people have reported, cedar's the perfect thing to line it with because it'll keep bugs away. I mean, even especially the biting bugs.
Well, what's the guy we watched before that talks about that out in Oklahoma, the Bigfoots out in Oklahoma that goes and does all the looks it up.
Trying to remember who you were talking about.
You talking about Area X and all that?
It's got a certain name. I just can't. I had it in my head when I was about to say it. And
the Woodhead concert.
No. Anyway, he's got a lot of tree structures on his video that he taught, and not just tree structures. He's found places where they've taken big, like huge slabs, like slate or whatever, and laid over top of a gorge and interwoven like cedar and things like that over the top of them, and the slab is huge. It's not like he or any 4 or 5 people could have picked this thing up and laid it where it was at, where they've actually made like intricate structures. I can't think of the name of that. We talked about it though, and I think it was on Tubi that I found it, but it was out in Oklahoma, out in the mountains of Oklahoma. I know which one you're
talking about, but I can't for the life of me think of who it is.
It'll hit me after we're out of here probably, and I'm like,
absolutely. That's the way it always works. 5 minutes after the shows are off, like, son of a gun. Steve Hayden says you can steep pine needles into tea, and it's a good source of vitamin C and others. Or you can just chew them direct. The sap from both spruce and cedar can be used to seal wounds, as well as honey. So there's a lot of natural plants out there that are very good remedies. If I had my natural remedy book to hand, I could quote a bunch of natural plants right here in the Ozarks that are all medicinal or good for digestion and things like that. There are a lot of natural remedies out there that we've overlooked now, that it's become so convenient to just buy ibuprofen or go to the store and you need Band-Aids.
It's easy to forget that basically if you're out in the woods, you're in a natural pharmacy.
Well, Wyatt Estes says Randy Harrington into the 400. Was it Randy?
No,
I know he's had quite a few formations on his as well.
Yeah, it wasn't Randy. It was somebody that we're not affiliated with or have talked to or anything like that. He's an older guy, and I want to say it's something monster, not the Mogollon monster, but something is driving me up the wall now. But
yeah, I'm like, I know it, but I don't know it at the same time. It's kind of driving me crazy. Glenn Dannison says the oldest thing I've heard about structures is that fire pits are found inside them with kindling, but no sign of a fire. That's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
God, it's going to drive me up the wall to think about that.
Arkansas Hog Hunter says, yeah, sassafras roots can do a lot of good things. So can rhubarb. Natural rhubarb can do a lot of good stuff. There are a lot of natural plants that that are
Well,
that we've kind of forgotten about in our daily lives. Especially those of us that grew up in a city. I grew up on a farm, and I remember a lot of that stuff that my grandmother and my mother used to talk about. And
yeah,
I'm always
yellow
looking for
root.
more sources of that. Yeah, the yellow root. There's all kinds of stuff that can do amazing things. I mean, down in New Mexico, they used to talk about breaking off the tips of yucca plants leaves, and you could strip that out and sew up clothes with it, or use it as a suture. Yucca plants got a lot of medicinal uses. Look at how many uses there are for aloe vera. I mean, these are just plants. I mean, they grow wild in places, and if we're aware of them, you can bet Sasquatch is aware of the medical properties of these plants.
I've heard there's a lot of sightings and encounters and things around where ginseng grows too. They like ginseng.
Well, we had that encounter story I read about that guy I knew from here in Missouri that got clocked in the head while hunting for morel mushrooms,
Yep.
and that's every spring.
And then
That'd be a
think
great
about
food source.
we'll think about the stories we've heard about, because I think we even talked about it on the show one time up in California. A lot of those marijuana grows where they've had really almost not violent, but like really strong encounters around places like that.
I wonder if it's
'Cause I would
because they're interested in the plant, or if they're pissed off that people are out there in their territory.
maybe both, because I would think they would probably use something like that a lot, because there would be a lot of properties that a plant like that could probably help them with.
Lynn Dannison says there's a guy in San Antonio finds structures with fake fire pits all the time, said to be found in Oklahoma too. What if they're not fake fire pits? What if they're setting those up for future use to come back to? There's no reason why these things couldn't be smart enough to make fire. And there are ways, and Robbie can tell you this as easy as I can. There are ways to build a fire that you can't see the light from distance.
Yep. Well, and think about the Ohio grass man. That's the only area where they build those grass structures because of that grass growing over there. There's all kinds of structures that are built up in that area that are just left there. So what if it's like we've talked about? What if it's this big range that they use, and they just build these little temporary shelters where they've always got a shelter where they can come back to. They're on their little walkabout, so to speak, and they know where that structure is. They've got it there. All they got to do is go into it, use it for what they need, and then they're off to the next one.
Exactly. Are you familiar with something they used to refer to as an Apache match?
I've heard of that, but I don't know exactly
how they can keep a spark alive rolled up in
yes,
in moss and stuff. They keep the spark and carry it with them. What if they're smart enough to do that?
Well, that was something that they had to do. They had to, as part of their test of their manhood, they had to like carry it across a river or something like that. But yeah, okay.
That's primitive technology, but it works.
Well, tool usage has been documented in some of these. So if they can use these tools, I'm sure they know this other stuff.
Yeah, chimps use tools, and if you look at some of the stuff that Jesus Payan has found, look at the freaking tools he's found.
Oh yeah, some of those axe heads that
way too big to have been used by a person.
Yeah.
What were you going to say, Rob?
I was just going to say, he's got a lot of that stuff. He's given some of that stuff away to University of New Mexico, but he's got a lot. He's got a huge collection of just stuff that he's just left or got in his house down there.
Yeah.
It's just, you cannot say that was all. That's just a human decided to make, because it'd take me and Johnny both to lift this thing up.
Yeah.
Here's a good comment. Navajo 9803 says ibuprofen came from tree bark. That does not surprise me. In fact, the drug digitalis comes from foxglove plants. and that's a
Yep.
commonly prescribed heart medication. There are a lot of plants in the natural world that are a lot of our modern medicines come from. The Native Americans used to have a saying that the Great Spirit made a plant to cure every ailment.
Yep. That's true. In the frontier days, excuse me, in the frontier days, they didn't have Walgreens or CVS to go to get this stuff. I mean, they had a lot of the same types of pains and ailments we had. They had to have ways, and even further back than that, Native Americans and natives of every country you had to have ways to cure this or treat these kind of things.
People in those
So I
days
mean,
didn't have dentists or anything, so they had toothaches, they had back pain, they had knee pain. And this is nothing new. Where our society didn't invent pain, so they would have had to
no,
have had things that they could, go to ways to do it. Arthritis affects people all walks of life. I mean, these are things that would be affecting them as much as they would us, especially if they're that much bigger than us. That means more strain on their joints. Lenore Wilson says, "What relation do you think Sasquatch have to giants?"
well, that goes back to that book that we actually talked about on one show. What was the name of it?
Genesis 6 conspiracy.
No, the book that we've talked about, Da. Was it the Giants and Us or
Hey, them and us.
Them and Us? Or
There's another really good one too. It's actually, I've got it right here on my desk. I've been rereading it. It's called The Suppressed History of America. It talks about some of the stuff that was found by Lewis and Clark that is still not talked about by the Smithsonian, including giant skeletons.
well, we've talked about how many giant skeletons that the Smithsonian has taken and not taken.
Mark Napier, yes, you're correct. Clove oil will work great on a toothache. There we go. Here's a good question. Marcus Antonius says, Muskogees believe that the overharvesting of animals led to an imbalance that brought the wrath of disease. Plants in turn gave humans natural medicines. Yeah, I couldn't argue with that logic. I mean, unfortunately, human greed is one consistent thing across the planet. If somebody finds something for free, there's going to be somebody that's going to try to exploit it.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, just think about how many movies are made based on that, and it's a cheesy B movie, but just think about Anaconda 2, The Hunt for the Blood Orchid. We're talking about trying to make that natural cure or that natural. Not natural, but they're trying to make the medical equivalent of the Fountain of Youth.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's perennia immortalis.
Right.
I mean, I know that's a fake, but there's a lot of stuff like that people just find and exploit just for the money and the fame.
Exactly. Yeah, well, the guy that owns Nestle, the guy that owns the Nestle Corporation, or I think maybe it's the CEO of Nestle, tried to claim that water was not a basic human right. That way he could monetize it.
Yeah.
Fortunately, that got shut down. Boys, we are coming up to the top of the hour. I know you don't have any camera to show, but you want to tell us a little bit about Scalawag Tactical, Robbie?
Sure thing. I can do that. Scalawag Tactical is one of our affiliates, is a veteran-owned company. Craig and his crew make some of the best knives that you will ever put in your hand. I can't show my blades, but I definitely have I got my Dew Claw with me, which is what DA is holding up there. There's the Bounty. There's the Gunner's Mate. If you're a fan of DA's books and you've read the books, you've heard most of these knives mentioned: the Jolly Rogers, the Privateer, the Bounty, the Gunner's Mate, the Boarding Axe. You've heard all those. That's the Gunner's Mate that DA's got there with a little special something on both sides. He knows a guy that can do some stuff like that.
I know a guy.
I know a guy. But these are knives that you just, if you like having a good feeling blade in your hand, and that's the Bounty. You're not going to go wrong with a Scallywag Tactical. You cannot go buy a Kershaw or a Spyderco or any of that stuff and pay $200 and something for it and come out any better than you could paying $45 to $80 for a good Scallywag. It's for the money, you can't beat them. That's was that the razor folder or just
it's the titanium razor folder.
Titanium razor folder. And I actually got to hold that knife in Gatlinburg when DA and I were up there. And all these knives are just, I mean, if they ever lose their edge, which is very, very rare, you can use them as impact weapons because they are made to last.
Well, with the gunner's mate, just look how thick the freaking steel is on that thing.
Yeah, the spine on that knife. If you hit somebody in the head with the spine of that knife, they're gonna know it. And they're actually releasing a bunch of new models. So they've got some good selections on the blemish blades section. And until the end of this month, they're giving all of our fans, they're giving you all an extra 10% too?
Extra 10%. It's now 20% off.
So basically, you use code DA Roberts at checkout. You're going to get an extra 10% on top of that 10%. So you're going to get 20% off of this, which stacks up with the good deals you're going to get on the blemish blades or any of the other blades. And they've got some really cool new stuff coming out, like that Mantis. I'm going to get me one of those. That's a cool little cleaver.
Nice.
Which is kind of like a mini version of the Dew Claw. So if you don't want something quite that big, you just want a little smaller one like that, check that Mantis out. It's pretty cool. They got the Dugan. They've got the which is a little push dagger. And they've got what's the Transformer? That's the one
that starts out as a regular blade and will lock in as a push dagger.
Yep. DA's got the kitchen knife set. That is a beautiful set of knives and razor sharp.
Yeah, you can slice tomatoes paper thin with those things if you want to.
Yep. And you can slice yourself with those things because they will cut you three ways: long, deep, and continuous. So make sure you get yourself one of Doc's Dark Angel medical kits before you get your Scallywag Tactical. Because you're probably gonna need them because DA and I have demonstrated on camera several times how sharp these things are because we both cut ourselves on camera with them. Not on purpose, but head on over to Scallywag Tactical, check them out. Use code DA Roberts 10 at checkout. Get yourself an extra 10% off of the 10% that code is going to get you, and tell them we sent you. And that's all I got to say about that.
They've got a really beautiful crystal whiskey decanter that I want to get, but yeah, I'm gonna have to wait on that. We've got between medical bills and I told Robbie about this, but I haven't mentioned it on the show. We just recently found out, like a week ago, that our house was built in 1958, and we were having some electrical issues. We had an electrician come over, and the wiring is shot. So we're going to have to move out of the house for 2 weeks to a month while they rewire the entire house. So, yeah. Our finances are going to be stretched tighter than a gnat's ass over a rainbow for the next 6 months or so.
It's tight, ain't it?
That's a unit of measure object to hear.
So you never know what you're going to hear on this show, John.
Well, I'm glad I could share a hillbilly expression with you there, Johnny.
Yeah, that's priceless.
Well, not that me and Johnny don't have our own hillbilly expressions. That's just one he hadn't heard. Well, I'm sure we've got some that you probably never heard.
Oh, yeah. We could probably make each other crack up and throw Doc in the mix.
Oh, Lord. That's the only thing we're missing tonight is Doc and Steve to have a.
Yeah.
We would have derailed a whole lot more if all of us had been here.
Yeah, you have a full-blown hillbilly hootenanny.
Yep. I get so wrapped up talking about the knives, I always forget to mention the Scally swag. So thank you for.
Well, I'm actually wearing one right now. I'm wearing one of the Scallywag t-shirts.
picking up my slack on that. Yep. They've got, I mean, you can spend 30 minutes on that website looking at their stuff. I mean, they've got all kinds of stuff. Keychains.
I want to get that
whiskey
decanter, and I
jar.
want to get one of their coffee presses. I've always heard coffee presses are the way to make coffee. I've never done it, but I want to get one of their coffee presses.
I hadn't either. Yeah, Marcus, there you go. Hillbilly Bucks, aka Super
Really?
Chats. I like that.
That's funny. What other behaviors have we not talked about?
Well, we kind of mentioned the structures. We went over that a little bit. Tongue click / tree knocks. What about the spider walks? Because that's kind of something to start. Just in my opinion, is kind of starting to come to the forefront a little bit more. I'm starting to see more accounts of people talking about that.
Yeah.
Sasquatch
I've never personally
overall.
seen that behavior, but it sounds creepy as hell. I know the guys at Hanobia described it. At the Siege of Hanobia, they talked about them spider crawling up to drag off their dead and the wounded.
Yep.
Then there's other people talking about them crawling up, just sneaking up behind them. I can't remember who it was. It might have been Coonbo Baker was talking about some crawling up behind their camp.
Yeah, I've heard Kumbo talk about it.
Yeah, so to me that's I don't know if that's more just them being stealthy, or if that's a specific behavior in and of itself. I mean, our soldiers will low crawl up on an objective. It's probably just them staying low and staying out of sight until they can get in close enough for a strike.
Well, we had 3 good ones come up in the. Mark Napier talked about them pacing people out of the woods. Billy Mitchum talked about them, about the chatter or the jabbering or whatever people thought or called it. And Paula Webb talked about backtracking. That's 3 good ones, though.
Heck yeah, it is. Let's pacing. Why do they follow people out of the woods? Let's jump on that one.
Now,
I think they're just making sure you're leaving. I think it's an intimidation thing, and they want you to leave.
We have actually that's happened to us several times. Pretty much every time we went up there, them however many has done that. It's paced us out of the, because we both have been like, we're being followed, and it parallels us. Sometimes you can hear, sometimes it's just a feeling. But
I had that feeling Sunday when I was leaving.
Yeah, Johnny went back up to our spot on Sunday, and it's. I know you've had it, DA, but for the chat, it's just something. If you haven't ever witnessed it or felt it or been
that kind of happened to me when I was down at Moon Valley. I went down there by myself. Noah's working overnights now. He got a job working for FedEx unloading airplanes, so he's gone a lot overnights. And he was sleeping, and I was bored, and Annette was watching baseball with Nick. And I said, hey, I'm going to hop in the car and run down to Moon Valley. She's like, you better be careful if you're going by yourself. I said, well, honey, I ain't going unarmed. So she was, ever since I had that cardiac incident, she's pretty worried about me getting off by myself. But I assured her I wasn't going to get too far off the beaten path, and I went on down there. And when I got down to Moon Valley, there was one other car there, and they left within just a few minutes of me pulling in. I was on one side of the river and they were on the other side. It wasn't like I was interrupting anything. They could have been going at it like freaking rabbits over there, and I wouldn't have known. But they were only there a few minutes after I got there, and I was completely alone in that valley for the better part of an hour. I didn't see another car, didn't even hear one. And it was pretty peaceful at first. But if you guys have read the new book, the short story, there's a story in there called Wrath of the Dogman. And in the story, I describe how a deputy sheriff gets to shooting at a dogman from one of the areas right there in Moon Valley. Well, here's the weird part. And I know this is probably just somebody screwing around, but I couldn't find anything they'd shot. When I got over to that area, when I was walking around, I found a crap ton of discarded 9mm shells, brass. Somebody had been shooting like crazy. There were no bullet holes in the trees. The sign that says Moon Valley River Access did not have bullet holes in it. There was nothing that laying around there that looked like they'd been shooting at, unless they were just sitting there plinking rounds into the water, which to me is kind of a waste of just ammunition. You're not really doing anything. But so unless they were shooting into the water, I got no idea what they were shooting at. But there was brass all over the place. Probably 50 to 60 rounds.
Well, and I told you about when I went with Jessica that time. We went up to one of those spots, and I found a metric crap ton of 300 blackout shell casings.
Thank you, Marcus. Appreciate the super chat, and thank you, man. Appreciate the
Thanks,
vote of
Mark.
confidence there.
But,
300 blackout is not something that's just cheaply shot either. That's an expensive round.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I can't believe you didn't gather that brass for me.
Well, I had a little. I had a few
picking
other
up
things
that
on
nine.
like, why in the world am I looking at?
Thought about picking up all that 9 brass and taking it to a buddy of mine that reloads. I really thought about it, but the problem was I was out there by myself, and I was the woods are like right up against that little parking area. And had I started picking up that brass, I would have had to have taken my eyes off the trees, and it was starting to get on toward dark. I'm like, yeah, if I had Noah down here, I might pick that up.
So, that's.
Steve Payton says, DA, do the deputies there carry 9mm? Some departments, yes. Greene County, we carried 9 when I was there. We carried a Glock 19 when I was a deputy, but they switched to the Glock 17 Gen 5 right after I left the department. And I carried a 9mm for most of my career. But some of the other counties around, like I believe Pulaski County uses the Glock 21, the 40. And I think Dallas County uses the 9mm. But for most of them around here use 9s, but a few of them are still holdouts using the Glock, the 40 cal.
But yeah, pacing is kind of an eerie thing, because I mean, it's if you had never been paced out of a place and you just know something's like me, you and Noah, we felt like we were being watched in Joe Ball that night.
Yeah, we definitely did. And I don't know if that was them just making sure we were leaving, or if we would have been in pretty serious trouble had we not taken the hint.
I don't think that was us being watched to see if we were leaving. I think that was predatory that night. That's just my feeling.
Joe Bald
is they always have the high ground.
Joe Bald is one of those places that you just feel odd the whole time you're there.
Well, when we drove through LBL Day or drove by, Johnny looked at me and said, "This just feels unhealthy." I think was the exact terminology he used.
Yeah.
Which is really spot on. Because like before we got there, you look at the trees, look at the grass around it, everything was nice and green. And you get into the LBL and everything's like almost dead. This is the way it feels. And
that's the way it was when I was there. I mean, it was just weird. I mean, as soon as you crossed over the little canal into northern LBL, it was just weird, and you could feel it. Hey, thank you, Miss Lene, for the super chat. Thank you.
Thanks, Miss Lene. But yeah, I think depending on the situation, where you're at, and how close you might be to something, I think pacing could be a predator. I think we were. I think it's predatory that night.
I think they're giving you the opportunity to leave peaceably, but if you don't want to and you don't take the hint, it might end quite badly for you. Mary Cole says, "What about mimicking talking?"
Yeah, I've heard a lot of that.
I don't think they necessarily understand the language. I think they're just mimicking the sound.
Yeah, parroting. Yeah, parroting. And I've heard them do that a lot, like mimicking children crying and women crying.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's something to try to lure people further in.
Now, I was camping with some buddies of mine, and this was back before Moon Valley was private property. All of that down there's got no trespassing signs now. You can't get anywhere where we used to go camp because the area right next to the river used to be a campground, but it's now posted no trespassing private property now. But back in those days when you could go in there and still camp, I remember camping down by the bluffs, and there are a bunch of caves in those bluffs. And I remember one night in the middle of the night, we heard what sounded like a woman crying out in the woods. Not a child, a woman. And we were all thinking about going out and seeing if we could find it, because it really sounded like a distraught woman. And one of the guys who was with us, again, I'm not going to say his name because I don't have his permission. I never asked. But one of the guys I grew up with, he was part Native American, and he's like, "Yeah, that's bad juju. I would not go out there. My grandfather would be having a shit fit if he thought you guys were going out there." He said, we've got our fire, plenty to see. If there's a woman out there that needs us, she'll come to us." And he said, best thing we can do is stay by the fire. And we did, but we heard it for a better part of an hour.
Yeah, I think that's a technique to lure people to them. And like Mickey just said, that's what we were talking about. I've heard many stories of them sounding like a child or a baby crying. Hey, Brian, what's up?
Owls and birds. Hey, Brian, what's up, buddy? How you doing, dude?
And, I've told you this. When I was up in North Carolina doing my tracking training, I heard, or we all heard it, but we got close to an old barn and as soon as we started getting close to that area, we heard what sounded like a screech owl, but it sounded like a screech owl that was like a bass singer.
Maybe 9 foot tall.
Yeah, 9 foot tall, 1,000-pound screech owl.
Tim Faust doing the screech
owl.
Yeah,
Tim Faust doing the screech owl.
Well, I talked to an old boy one time up by Lake of the Ozarks just about a year ago. And I was asking him if he had anything strange happen near his property. And he said, well, there's something odd. He says, but it's probably just somebody's television. I said, what do you mean? He goes, well, there's a couple campgrounds not far from here. It had to been somebody just listening to TV too loud. And I said, well, what did you hear? And he goes, you remember years ago, they used to have that show on TV called Kung Fu Theater? And I said, yeah. And he goes, you know how it was all badly redubbed? I said, yeah. He said, that's what it sounded like. It sounded like somebody speaking broken Japanese out in the woods. He says, so it had to have been somebody's TV. And I'm like, oh, really? And I asked him if he'd ever heard of the samurai chatter. He's like, what the hell's the samurai chatter?
Yeah. I mean, this is all behavior that is, this is not new stuff. This is stuff that I've heard for years and years, that stuff like this. And I think Mark's right, mimicking the women crying to lure men, luring women out by mimicking the baby crying. I mean, that's stuff.
Yeah, there was 6 or 8 of us. We were all teenage boys. I mean, it about worked. I mean, 3 or 4 of us were fixing to go out there and look. Marcus Antonius says the mimicking of other sounds is reflective of a highly intelligent animal. Yeah, I definitely think this thing is intelligent. Whatever anybody wants to claim the origin of the species is, I still tend to believe it's a species that's been here a long time. I think it's probably leftover pockets of Neanderthal or Denisovian or something like that that has adapted to its surroundings. So it's hard to say what the origin of these things are, but I definitely think they're intelligent.
Yeah.
Bizzle A says Wrath of the Dogman's the story I'm reading now. Well, Bizzle, right there where he first encounters the eye shine, that's where I found all of that. Is literally within feet of where I found all those 9mm casings. And I was like, that's kind of weird.
So moving on to another, you want to go to backtracking?
Sure, absolutely. That's one of my favorites. Because people report all the time of they're following tracks, and that the tracks will go out into the middle of a clearing and just disappear. Now, a lot of people use this as an argument to say, well, they must have gone through a portal. And I've always believed that there's got to be a more down to earth explanation for that. I mean, because if these things, even 1% of these things preyed on people and they could go through portals, they would be in your house and kill everybody in your house. So many damn thing you could do about it. So there's got to be a more physical explanation. And that's when Robbie started talking about backtracks. Robbie's a trained tracker. He's a man tracker for his department. So he knows tracks. And when he started talking about backtracking, just a lot of things made sense. So Robbie, tell us about how tracks are made and what the difference between a forward track and a backtrack is.
Okay. Basically, when you walk, there's a thing called primary point of impact. So if you're walking forward, you just think about it. The first part of your foot that hits the ground is going to be your heel. And you're going to push forward, and the cast off is going to be in a different location, because as your heel hits and you walk forward and pull up on the ball of your foot, the cast off is going to be shown to the back of the track, because that's the way your foot's pushing you forward. So if you're backtracking, the ball of your foot is going to be the first thing that hits, and your heel is going to lift up, and the cast off and things like that are going to be pushed towards the front. So this is not something that just anybody who's looking at a track is going to just automatically look and see. That's something that you have for it. Yeah, that's something that you have to like look at the track, and you have to, and I'm talking about looking at minute details of the track. It's not something that you can stand straight up and look down at the track and say, oh yeah, that track was this way. You have to get down and look, the angle of the pitch, and everything is going to be different about a track that is backtracked on. It's basically going to be a mirror of what somebody walking forwards is going to look like. Everything is going to be mirrored to the opposite. And if these things are as smart as we say they are, or that we think they are, and it's trying to get away from the hairless monkey carrying the bang stick, it doesn't, because we've said this, I don't know how many times on the show, you only have to look in nature to get a lot of these answers. There are animals in nature that know how to backtrack. I can't tell you how many stories I've read of grizzly bear hunters who were tracking a grizzly, and next thing they know, the grizzly's behind them, because the grizzly started backtracking and worked its way around and got behind them. Rabbits will backtrack. I've heard stories of rabbit hunters where their dogs will be running the trail, and next thing you know, the dog is got the rabbit right behind him, and it's just running in a circle because the rabbit's backtracked to get away from the dog. So if this thing's as smart as we think they are, think about the scenario. It walks past a big boulder, walks out about 20, 30 more yards, then backtracks itself back to that boulder, jumps up on that boulder, and then takes off, 20, 30 yards to the left or right. You'll never see that, and it'll look like the tracks just completely stop.
And that's a far more logical explanation than it walked through a portal.
And like I said, if you don't, because before I went through that class, I would not have known. I knew what I've heard of backtracking, but I didn't know what to look for. I didn't know what actually constituted a backtrack. I couldn't look at a track and tell you, oh yeah, that track went, the primary point of impact was the ball of the foot this time instead of the heel. You have to actually know what you're looking for to be able to see these kind of things. But now once you know it, once you hear this, and once you can look at that and say, oh yeah, I see that, it's different. But if you don't know that, you're not going to,
Search and evasion school and special forces schools teach our soldiers how to do this very thing to throw off pursuers. So if it's something that can be taught, it's something that these things who grew up in the woods, who basically evolved there, it's a skill that they would definitely have.
Yeah, and that just like we talk about with the adaptive camouflage and things like that. I mean, these things are born in the woods. Their whole purpose is to not be seen, not be found, not be. I've been a hunter and been in the woods my entire life, and I could probably count on one hand the number of skeletons of any type of animal that I've found in the woods. And how many times have we talked about deer? How many deer have you ever shot that it didn't move before you saw it?
Every deer I've ever gotten, the only reason I found it was because it was moving.
Yeah. And that's just a deer. So I'm not saying deer are stupid, even though they run out from moving cars, but they're not. They don't have the same level of intelligence that these things do. So if these things do not want to be seen, they're not going to be seen.
Right.
Just like
and it's wearing a natural ghillie suit.
Yeah. Well, just like the one Johnny and I saw, we were looking at the same one. He saw one color, I saw a different color, just because of the angle that the sun was at.
Angle the light was hitting it.
We were 5 feet apart, but we were looking at a different angle.
Yeah, it was so close. It was you think that it didn't matter, but I saw a brighter color than he did.
Yeah,
I saw a blonde beach boy, and he saw an auburn or whatever.
Yeah, but we were looking at the exact same thing. So that to me just lends credence to what we've always said about the adaptive camouflage, the clear hair follicles, the way the light passes through this, the way that I don't think we would have seen that one if it hadn't been doing back to what we're talking about, the swaying side to side. If it'd just been still, I don't think we'd have ever seen that.
No, it looked like another tree stump or something.
So I think the ones that are seen either are younger ones and they're making the mistake of moving, or they just don't care at that point. They're not worried about it because they know they can disappear whenever they need to by just either being still or as fast and agile as they can be. They know they can get away.
So one of the other things I want, and it's not necessarily behavior, but the clear hair shafts. What's your take on that?
I 100% think that is what it is, and it's like fiber optics. How fiber optics work. Sun hits. If it's standing in front of a green tree and the sun hits it, and you're looking directly at it, you're going to see green. If it's standing in front of a brown tree, you're going to see brown. It's going to blend in. You and I have seen that with the video that MK Davis showed us on there. I mean, that was clearly
Freeman footage.
Yeah,
it was a Freeman. That's what I was thinking of.
It was clearly a black creature, but it stopped in front of a green tree and just disappeared.
That was creepy.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it didn't go through a portal. It didn't teleport. It didn't activate its cloaking device on its belt. It didn't get beamed up to the Starship Enterprise. It stopped in front of the tree, and the clear hair shafts absorbed and redirected the color of the light around it, which was the green tree. And as soon as Freeman started getting closer and it realized he was still coming, it started walking again. And as soon as it started moving, boom, there it was.
Wow.
To me, that's one of the most absolutely compelling pieces of evidence is that is caught on camera. It's plain as day. And you see it literally disappear before your eyes.
Other than the Patty footage, the Freeman's probably my second favorite.
Yeah, those two pieces of footage to me are just outstanding. And we've got researchers from coast to coast on 2 different continents who have talked about the clear hair shafts. They've been found all over the United States. They've been found in Canada. They've been found in Europe. They've been found in 3 continents because they were found in Australia as well. These hair shafts have a clear hair shaft, much like a polar bear's. So it will absorb and redirect the color of the light around it. So you take that clear hair shaft, much like the most recent generations of ghillie suits have fiber optic strands in them. If you take that fiber optic strand and you hold it up in front of a green tree, it's going to look green. And that's just how it works. That's just how the light refracts through it.
Yeah, and I've even when I've had these conversations with people, I've said, okay, if you shave a polar bear, what color is its skin? And they're like, white. I'm like, nope. Like, what color? I said, it's black.
Yep.
I said, and they're like, why would it have black skin? I said, well, where does a polar bear live? In the Arctic. I said, what does the color black do? Well, it absorbs the heat. I said, yeah, because they need that to stay warm and to thermoregulate. I said, but where are they having to hunt? They're having to hunt in the ice and the snow. So if it's having to lay out there on an ice floe or a snowbank, watching a hole in the ice for a seal to come up and get air, it needs to look like its environment. So it's got those clear hair shafts, so it blends into the snow and the ice.
And it's been observed that polar bears, when it's snowing, if a polar bear's on the hunt, it will sit still and put its paw over its nose.
Yep. Mm-hmm. So I mean, like we said, look at nature. Look at what's already known scientific facts in nature, and that explains most of the stuff that these questions that people have about these things. They're already explained in the natural world that we already know about. It's not hard to find the answers if you just know where to look.
Dead Man has a good comment. He says, DA, from what I found is don't go out and hunt these creatures. Let them come to you while camping. That's the best results I've ever had is basically just going in an area and sitting still. If you think you're going to go out in the woods and out track one, no, yeah. Robbie, how much success do you think you would have if you went out in the woods and instead of sitting in a deer stand, you said, you know what, I'm just going to walk through the woods until I get a deer?
Nah, because they're going to know
you'd ever see one.
Yeah, they're going to know I'm coming way before.
That's why you get your best results deer hunting from a deer stand. You sit still, you shut up, and you don't make any noise. And the people that sit up in their deer stand and eat and talk on their cell phone are never going to see a deer. But the people that sit up there and know how to be quiet generally get rewarded. Yeah, some years you get skunked. But, if you're quiet enough and don't make a whole lot of racket, especially if you've done something to block your scent, you'll get rewarded. And I think the same thing can be said with these creatures, because the more noise you make, the more ruckus you cause, the far less likely you are going to see anything. Oops, we are Miss Naomi. Miss Lene just reminded me we're at the bottom of the hour. We'll take a quick moment and pause to talk about the good folks. Well, the good folk at BrockBlades.com. The tactical midget himself, Ken Brock. Ken Brock is a retired law enforcement.
You can say decent.
Well, he's not here to make fun of you, so you have to be nice.
I don't have to be, but all right, I'll be nice.
Ken Brock is a retired law enforcement officer who makes custom blades in the shop behind his house. Whereas Scallywag Tactical Blades are amazing blades, they're mass produced. So if you get two gunner's mates, put them side by side, they're going to be identical. But no two blades Ken makes are identical. Handle styles will vary. The blade shape and style will vary. They're all made by hand. And a custom gift, a gift of a custom blade is something that'll be treasured. And these aren't meant to be just set on a shelf and look pretty. These are functional utility knives that he does an amazing job on. They're handcrafted, absolutely beautiful. This is the one I've got. It's called the Skane Do. It's modeled off the old Scottish daggers. Just absolutely beautiful knife and stupid sharp. I mean, stupid sharp enough to do something stupid with. I can tell you that for sure. But fantastic blades. You can check them all out over at brockblades.com. He has a number of blades already made that you can purchase. Or if you want a custom made blade, there's a form on the website where you can order a custom blade. And he's pretty prompt to respond on those. And just let him know we sent you, and he'll make sure you get your full 10% off. So if you're checking out, just use discount code Cryptid10 for 10% off your order. Or if you're doing a custom build, make sure you heard about it here on DA Ex Machina. But tell him we sent you, and then that we're pretty proud to be part of the affiliate with him, because he's a good dude. He loves to give Robbie crap. It's his favorite sport.
Yes, it is.
Well, he's got to be a likable guy then.
You're funny, Johnny.
Someone asked earlier if there are panthers in Missouri. Yeah, and actually they're pretty common anymore. Here recently, mountain lions and black bears have been showing up on Ring doorbell cameras here in Springfield. And Springfield's the third largest city in Missouri, behind St. Louis and Kansas City. Yeah, with the metropolitan area of Springfield, probably in the ballpark of 400,000, 500,000 people, if you count all the little bedroom communities. And these mountain lions and bears are being seen far enough into Springfield, they had to come through some of the suburbs to get to where they're at. So they're pretty bold. They're coming into areas where you wouldn't expect to see them. We are definitely seeing large predators in areas we hadn't seen them before. And I'm thinking that might be a little cause for concern, especially if other large predators are doing it too. Kirst says, what's the most common round caliber for Leos nowadays? Most departments go with 9mm because it's more cost effective than the bigger calibers. Some departments still use the 40, some use the 10mm, but most departments, at least in this area, use the 9. I don't know about Robbie's area, but around here, 9's pretty standard.
Yeah, 9's. It used to be. It was 9 when I first got in 28 years ago. Then everybody started going to the 40, and then went back to 9, and it was 45. Now it's pretty much back to the 9s. Now everybody's around's carrying that again.
Here's an interesting comment. Diamond State Cryptid and Paranormal says, Arkansas Game and Fish still swears there are no panthers in the state, but there's a hefty fine for killing one. That does not surprise me. They're not here, but if you shoot one, we'll fine you. If I've got to shoot one, I'm probably not going to report it. It's not like I'm going to go out and hunt one. Now, one's going to have to be coming after me or one of my wife or one of my kids. And at that point, it's going to get shot numerous times, and not just one to discourage it. I know enough to not let a wounded animal go free, but I will definitely mag dub one for trying to get at my wife or my kids.
Yep.
I've always figured, and it was even the case if it's somebody that kicks my door in and tries to rob me. I figure if you bought one round, you might as well have the rest of the magazine too.
Oh yeah, of course. We're having a 19 for 1 sale.
Yes. It's like loaf bread. Give them all the slices.
Buy one round at regular price, get the rest of the magazine for free. Donaldson says, ask them if they aren't in the state, how can you kill one?
Johnny's still mesmerized over Nat's ass over a rainbow over here.
I've been saying that for years, man.
I'm going to use that one at band camp.
This one time at band camp, they stretched the Nat's ass over a rainbow.
I popped one off in front of one of my sergeants one day, and this was with a guy. I was holding a guy in handcuffs, and I just said something just popped off the top of my head, and he laughed so hard he had to walk away and calm down. He said, "Is this guy on drugs?" I said, "Sarge, he's high enough to hunt ducks with a rake." And he just guffawed. He's like, "Where the hell did that come from?" I'm like, "Shit, I've been saying that since I was a kid."
You said that on the show the other night, I think.
I think I did.
God. Has he been to Pagans?
That sounds like something you'd hear from. That sounds like a Katichi saying.
Yeah, that's definitely Katichi. DA, there was a chick named Michelle. She commented earlier about the owl sounds.
That is
I've always
definitely
been a
something that's been reported. And I don't know if that's well, it actually could serve multiple purposes. They could know enough of each other's linguistics to know when it's them and not an actual owl. Or it could just be mimicry. I mean, we know they mimic other sounds. So what do you guys think?
Yeah.
What do you think the purpose of the big owl call is?
I mean, I think it's just like you said. I think they know that it's not an actual owl because it sounds enough like an owl that most people would think that it was an owl. But I think it's I'm over here. Where are you at? Where are they at? Type thing. You know.
I've been triangulated many times in North Florida, and by owls. I've had them come in. I've had them go out. They change their perimeter, in and out. And were they really owls? An owl has has a crisp finish, and then you hear one that kind of tapers out too long.
Sounds like an owl that weighs 500 pounds.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Get that real bass. That's an owl.
Yeah. Well, that what I heard in North Carolina, that's a big owl.
And there's people have described that too, what they call the 500-pound owl or the 1,000-pound owl. Native Americans used to use whippoorwill calls and owl calls to communicate over distance without shouting. We of course we all saw those in cowboy movies growing up, but that was actually a legit thing. They would use whistle calls, or they would use bird sounds to alert for different things. So it's completely within reason that Bigfoot are doing the exact same thing. An owl call means this, a tongue pop means this. They might have a whole sub language that we're completely unaware of because we're not part of that little clique. We're not part of their world. So every sound they make could have a different meaning.
Yeah. I mean, like we say, this is all speculation, but I think it stands to reason that if they're doing it and there's multiple doing it, there's a reason. It's not just, oh, well, that sounded cool, I'm going to make that sound. But there's got to be a reason behind it, especially if they're intelligent.
Here's a good comment. Estelle Hardington says, I saw a sign on Facebook from British Columbia that Sasquatch have been seen in the vicinity. This was a park with do's and don'ts if you see one. They also wanted to report it to a warden. They wanted location. That is not surprising. I mean, signs like that, possible Bigfoot habitat, that kind of thing. Signs are starting to pop up at trailheads. More and more states are passing legislation to protect them, except Oklahoma, who went the other direction. Oklahoma offered a $3 million bounty on one brought in alive. And Oklahoma ain't screwing around. But they did specify alive, so good luck if you're going to try to cash in on that bounty.
Yeah.
I know I'm not going to try it because, I don't want to, end up like that guy on Trading Places locked in a cage with a gorilla in a gorilla costume.
Oh, God. I forgot about that.
Yeah.
They're sending him back to Africa.
Oh, that's a great movie.
That's a great movie. There was another comment that I was.
Wasn't it Kim Belushi? Or no, his brother.
No,
his brother.
That was Dan Aykroyd and
Dan Aykroyd,
Eddie Murphy.
Eddie Murphy.
The guy in the monkey suit.
Oh yeah, that was
I can't remember that guy. I can't remember his name, but it was funny. Lenora Wilson says, how closely related do you think Bigfoot and dogman are? Because they both have a lot of the exact same behavior traits. Well, those behavior traits, I believe, are because they're both large predators. Most large predators have a certain degree of overlap in behavior traits on how they hunt, um, and types of prey that they hunt. So I don't really think Bigfoot and dogman are related in any way. I think they're totally separate things. Bigfoot, dogman type creatures have been described going back into antiquity, long before the phrase Bigfoot or dogman was ever dreamed up. Bigfoot came about in 1957 because of the Jerry Cruz castings that he made up in Northern California on the logging road, and dogman because some radio DJ up in Michigan coined the term. Before then, they were known as wolfmen or werewolves or wild men in the case of Bigfoot. But you look back some of those old newspaper clippings, and they talk about a wild man or hairy man or hairy hermit, and sometimes they would say we think the wild man of Borneo escaped from a derailed circus train. But I'm telling you, there must have been a plethora of freaking circus trains derailing in the 1800s, because it seemed like every other freaking article you ran across, oh, circus train derailed, the wild man of Borneo escaped. Good God, do you guys not have any railroad safety? This has happened like 100 times now. But there were lots of explanations.
And how many were there in Borneo that were getting caught?
Kidding. Exactly. How many people went to Borneo and packed one of them dudes in? And if they're so easy to catch, how come we haven't caught one here?
I wonder if they got $3 million for that.
Probably not. If it was in a circus sideshow, I'm doubting it. But there's lots of attempts to explain these creatures, and some of them go back pretty far. I mean, tales of Bigfoot-like creatures happen in medieval Europe. The epic poem Beowulf, if you read the description of Grendel, it sounds very much like a Bigfoot. The term cynocephali for dog-headed warriors was coined by the Greeks and the Romans. So they encountered them. So these things go back throughout history. It's only in more recent times have we started to have the modern names like Bigfoot, Sasquatch, Dogman. But long before then, you can still find lots of articles in old newspapers that talk about these exact same creatures.
And like we've talked about before, the trolls and things like that lived under bridges. That in Norse mythology and things like that could have been Bigfoot type creatures.
Very easily.
Because think about how many different names there are in the First Nation tribes for
every tribe's got their own name.
Mm-hmm.
Michelle Powell said, someone asked earlier about infrasound. I remembered that. I just didn't get to it. We know for a fact that infrasound exists among the animal species. Elephants can do it. Tigers do it. Whales do it. There are lots of species of and known animals that use infrasound. So it's not outside the realm of possibility that Bigfoot type creatures are doing it as well. I personally have never experienced it, but I've also never swam next to a great white shark, so I'm not going to say it's impossible because I have never seen one. So it could happen. It's just it's outside my experience. I've never had it happen to me that I know of. I have gone into areas and just suddenly had the distinct feeling I needed to get my ass out of there. But man, that might just be primitive, good old ass saving fear. Kay Bauer says, what's a sign of infrasound? What were you going to say, Johnny?
I was just saying, I've experienced gators doing it. You'd be out there, frog gigging or something, and old bull gator's going to run you off. He does that during mating season. Mm-hmm. Same deal. Get out of the water.
I think we inadvertently did it with an old rusty gate one time. Open it up and it made that sound, and you could feel that like vibrating in your chest. It made such a racket. I don't know if it was infrasound or just a really loud noise, but I don't know exactly what infrasound is or it isn't. But I definitely think it's a factor. With tigers can use it to stun prey, and elephants can use it to communicate over long distances, and bull gators are using it. It's not outside the realm of possibility that Bigfoot's using it too. And some people have described headaches, nausea, Some people get like violently sick in an area and will feel fine as soon as they get the hell out of there. So it affects different people in different ways. But most common that I've heard of people describe like blurry vision, headaches, nausea, that kind of thing.
And I still think some of that, like if you have an encounter with one of these, and it's, let's say it's your first time, and you have that adrenaline dump, because you're going to have an adrenaline dump when you see this, that parasympathetic nervous reaction that you have, and you get that PNS backlash. If you know this, DA, from law enforcement, we've had all this stuff. If you think about all these symptoms that you just described, every one of those symptoms is what you're going to get when you start getting that, when you go through that fight or flight syndrome and you experience that, and your body has that adrenaline dump, when it starts getting rid of that adrenaline, those are the things you're going to have. Now, I'm not saying that there's not infrasound. I'm not, because I know there is. But some of that stuff could be contributed to that. That you see this, your body goes through that fight or flight. Oh, what am I going to do? And it dumps that adrenaline to prepare you to either run or fight for your life or whatever. And then once you're out of it and your body starts processing all that stuff, all those symptoms are what you're going to go through when your body starts getting rid of that. So I think some of that could be that too.
Be part of it. John Wayne Gates says, my mom said there were boogers down around Ava, Missouri, where she was born. Well, Ava, Missouri, funny enough that you would mention Ava. Ava is in Douglas County, Missouri. And Douglas County is known to the locals as Booger County. That is literally what it's called.
Wow.
You ask somebody from the Ozarks where Booger County is, they're going to point you right to Ava.
And
there was another comment
I
missed.
My great grandmother used to tell me all the time not to, don't you go too far in the woods and boogers will get you. That's what they were called back then.
I used to have a ball cap. I had an uncle bring it back from a road trip. It was from Booger Hollow, Arkansas. Population 7, counting one coon dog. My favorite hat when I was a kid. You couldn't find out Booger Hollow. Booger Hollow's got a hell of a history. Well,
the Downy Booger, that legend of the Downy Booger that Greg did that's what it was called. It was the Downy Booger. It was a Bigfoot story. So,
there used to be a little bitty town up near Montreal, Missouri, near Lake of the Ozarks, that it was just a little bitty town. And when you would pull up the city limit sign, I don't remember what the name of that little town was. I'd have to go find it again. But it said such and such city limits, population 7 people, 4 cats, and a dog. Lenora Wilson has a good question. And Robbie, I'll let you and Johnny field this one first, as I think everybody already knows how I feel about it. Do you believe dogman and Bigfoot, as we know them today, came from fallen angels mating with animals?
This is, I know that there are people who have really compelling arguments for that. But my feelings on this, DA. I think these are just flesh and blood animals. I know if you look back at some of these stories and some of these things, there's a lot of good things that compelling wise for the arguments that you can say, well, yeah, look at this and this kind of. But like I said before, all you got to do is look in nature to get the answers for most of this stuff anyway. And I think it's just an animal. Now, does that mean that there's not some kind of connection somewhere further back? No, that's not what that means. But my personal opinion, I believe Bigfoot is an undiscovered species of North American great ape. I think dogman is probably a holdover from maybe some dire wolf, or maybe just something we hadn't discovered yet. Yeah. But that's my opinion. Johnny, I'll let you answer your.
Yeah, I don't know about the kinky angel that was into animals versus women. I don't understand that, but I have heard that. And then if you want to go down the whole Anunnaki road and all those other different angles, genetic splicing, chimeras, just, the stories of the Minotaur came from somewhere, right?
Exactly.
So you got Minotaur, you got, what was the other
Centaurs,
thing?
Centaurs,
satyrs.
You got flying horses. I mean, I don't think people just sat around and smoked peyote and wrote weird stories back then. Things are based on stuff.
I would not dismiss the Nephilim theory, but I think there's enough evidence to suggest these creatures have been here for a very long time. I don't really think we need to necessarily get any one religion involved to explain the origin of these creatures. I think it's a separate evolution. I think it is a creature that evolved alongside of us, and at some point we learned to be afraid of them, and probably drove them below ground. They call it the uncanny valley theory. There's a reason why humans all over the world evolved to fear things that look almost like us.
Things that hunt us in the dark.
And that's a genetic memory across the board.
Well, it's like us with the pareidolia, seeing faces and everything. So,
we've talked about it before. These stories started from somewhere, but if you look at the stuff that we thought 20 years ago, and just to use sharks again, 20 years ago people thought sharks were just mindless eating machines. I mean, look at some of the lines that they used in Jaws. You got the guy from the Oceanographic Institute who's saying it's a perfect eating machine. All it does is eat, swim, and make little babies. Well, we know that none of that stuff is true now. So the stuff that we thought 10, 15, 20 years ago, that doesn't, because we thought it then, doesn't mean that it's 100% accurate. Now, it doesn't mean that it was fantasy back then, but it's just like we've talked about before. Any form of science that's significantly greater than what we can understand is going to seem like fantasy or magic. Because you take a cell phone back to the Civil War era, or even a big lighter. That's back then they would have thought that was witchcraft, and you get burned at the stake for having a big lighter. That doesn't mean that they're wrong or they're stupid. It's just the understanding factor. That stuff that's not understood at one time, it's understood now. And I think that back then when people looked at stuff, they didn't have the scientific knowledge to look at things the way we do now. And you have to make your formulations based on what you know. And if you didn't know anything other than these stories that are passed on, that's where you get that stuff.
Yeah, I'd agree. Dino Bravo fan says, I'm on PEI, that's Prince Edward Island. And what do you guys think of that Bigfoot video that was filmed here? I was there and it was not a Bigfoot. If it's the video I'm thinking of, I really couldn't tell you for sure what it was. There's something moving, but it's kind of like that video that we took down at Joe Bald. I know what I think it is, but it's not clear enough to tell.
Which one was that, DA?
If it's the one I'm thinking of, it was taken from a boat from shore, and it was moving along the edge of the trees. I think you'd know it if you saw it.
Yeah,
yeah,
I saw it. I have no opinion on it. Such a distance.
Yeah.
Vicky Dennison says, DA, do you think that the scientists will ever agree that they're real without a body? I think they've had bodies, and I think that they've kept a lid on it. There's plenty of anecdotal evidence out there that we could make a case for the existence of this creature. Robbie and I both tell you, we've sent men to prison on eyewitness testimony. But when it comes to Bigfoot, eyewitness testimony is right out the window, even when it's not Carl and Cletus from the local 7-Eleven who claim they saw one while they were smoking meth out behind the dumpster. You know, you've got people that are all walks of life, doctors, lawyers, law enforcement, you know, judges. We've got people from all walks of life who are reporting seeing these creatures. It's not just the guy with 2 teeth that is banned from calling the tornado hotline.
It was Pandelirium.
God. Watching the lookity box, and this big tornado come down out of the sky and stole all my lawn ornaments. There was pink flamingos across 2 states.
So, I mean, you know, what we say here is our opinion. It's not
exactly.
Don't take anything that Johnny and I say is okay. This is just what the 3 of us think. I mean, you know, we could be proven wrong, and if we're proven wrong, we'll be like, "Yep, yeah, we were wrong."
Absolutely.
You know,
the thing to bear in mind. Go ahead, Robbie. Sorry.
I was going to say that, you know, we the deal with the skull, that you and I were just like, well, we don't know what the heck this is, and we had that whole show about it.
Mm-hmm.
And then after the show, you sent it to somebody. Was it MK?
No, Doug Highcheck.
Doug Highcheck identified.
Yeah, that's a pitbull skull.
Yeah, we didn't have to come back on the show and say, "Hey, we were wrong. This was this." But we did, because full transparency. You know, we're not here to try to push what we think and what we feel on anybody. We're just, you know, we're here to discuss about it, and we have our opinions just like everybody else's have. You know, if people have opinions that these things are chimeras or they're Nephilim or you know, everybody's free to have their own opinion, and because we believe one way, you know, we don't expect anybody to believe 100% like we do, or you can't be a part of it. That's not what this is about. You know, this is about everybody coming together and discussing and having a good, safe space where everybody's opinions are welcome. And I think that's a problem. Well, not just our field, with everything. You know, if you don't believe how I believe, then we can't be friends. That's just,
yeah,
that's stupid.
That does nobody any good in this field.
No,
because you don't learn. We say all the time, folks, there are no experts in this field. We do not present everything that we talk about. We don't present it as gospel fact, because we don't know. You know, we present theory. We present things we've observed. You know, we'll present picture evidence when we have it. But at no point are we going to claim that our way is the only way it could possibly be. But we present the things that we think it is. And those have changed over the years. You know, as we've learned new things, if we've experienced other things, we've kind of adapted and evolved our theories on these things. And we will continue to do so until they're a proven fact. Wayne, thank you for the super chat, man.
Is that super chat? Is that the lyrics for Kung Fu Fighting? Carl Weathers or whoever it was that did that song.
That's funny. Dwayne says, I have the owl noises. One night there were several, kept getting closer to each other. Then while one was right in the middle of the owl call, it changed to gorilla whoops, then 3 apes fighting. Dude, I would have been like, you know what? This is a great time to put my cooler back in the truck and get my ass out of here.
Oh, would you look at the time?
Hell yeah. Roxanne Delgado says, DA, I came across a video that supposedly found a Bigfoot head. Thought the video was weird. If it's the one I'm thinking of, I think that guy's pretty thoroughly been debunked.
Well, is she talking about the Coyote Peterson one from Brave Wilderness?
Oh, I don't know if it's the one that the guy claimed he found a skull, which just turned out to be a replica gorilla skull, or if it was the guy that had the one frozen and claimed he had a Bigfoot. Because there's been a few hoaxers try to pull that off.
Well, if it's the second one you were talking about, that's that guy that I sent you the David what's that guy's name? Peter something, another dog training.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that guy's.
That was the absolute worst animatronic I've ever seen in my life.
Oh yeah.
I've
I
seen
told you
better
that one.
animatronics at a Halloween store.
But if it's the
Roxanne
Casual
says the one
Peterson
found in the mud.
that
One found in the mud. That was the
yeah,
skull that was found. Yeah, that turned out to
and
just actually be a replica gorilla skull you can buy at the
yeah,
store.
they hosted that video, and I think they did it as a
Publicity stunt.
joke in poor taste to make fun of people who believe in Bigfoot.
I think there's a special place in hell for hosers.
I agree.
Or I hope there is.
Pine Knot Yoder says, I've always wondered, are we hearing more about Bigfoot lately because us developing more of their mountains and remote land? With all the new hikers during COVID pushing them out of their space. You know, that it's funny you wouldn't mention that because Robbie and I and Doc were talking. I think Steve was even involved on the conversation that something odd happened during the COVID lockdown when so many people were stuck at home. We started seeing big predators coming back into areas they hadn't been in a long time. During
Yep.
COVID is when we started seeing black bears and mountain lions coming into Springfield. I don't know if they're losing their fear of us or if they've just started to come back into territories and are not eager to give it back up, especially since, now we're seeing deer all over town. I mean, you can't go to a city park without seeing a couple of deer in Springfield anymore. They know it's safe. People can't hunt them here. So eventually it's going to bring the big predators in too. So yeah, a certain amount of it is us encroaching on their territory. But I think that we're also going to see a bizarre trend, especially with the missing 411, of more and more predators starting to lose their fear of us.
Yeah, and it's just like we've said. I mean, you see these when these houses and places like that are in the outskirts of towns, when they get abandoned, it doesn't take nature long to take back over. And we were not able to go outdoors or go places for 2.5, 3 years.
That was stupid.
Yeah, it doesn't take nature 3 years to grow back over. So when stuff like that happens and we're out of these places for that
Even
amount
a
of
few
time,
months.
yeah, they're gonna come back in, and it's gonna if we're able to push them back out again, it's gonna take a long time before you can push them out of these areas that they've come back and reestablished themselves in. That's just the way it goes. That's just nature.
You got to think about the hard men that did the hard job of clearing this nation out of, the wilderness. They didn't have a bunch of EPA and college nitwits telling them, what they could and couldn't do to make things happen. So they had no regulations. They just did what needed to be done. That's like, kind of like what men do. And now that's frowned upon, and we'll never push a critter back out of a piece of land. It'll be protected somehow or another.
Yeah.
Barry Cole says, do they come into town any sightings? Yeah, there are quite a few sightings of people seeing them in town. There was a small town in Oklahoma that was having a rash of problems with sightings of them coming in and raiding trash cans. So there are a number of places that have had sightings in town, including up in Alaska.
Yeah, it's like Johnny said. I mean, when this country was first being founded, you didn't have that kind of oversight of, you can't do things this way because of this, or you can't do that. You didn't have that. Now you do. And, when something gets established, there's just no way to push it back out. And, call it veil be lifted, call it whatever you want to call it. It's that ragged edge of nature pushing that much closer to us now versus beforehand it was us pushing that ragged edge of nature further back. Well, it's just the tables have kind of got turned now, and that's something that we're just going to have to deal with because it is what it is.
CK Bowers. Spotted owl turkey.
Yeah. Just think we're one closer to being a wolf turd.
Yep, we sure are.
Well, you know, you might find yourself in some hairy situations. And when I was in LBL, I went around some of those areas by myself late at night. Not the brightest ideas I've ever had in my life. I won't do it again. I learned my lesson. I will not do it again. I've gone to places here in Missouri, out in the woods by myself for years. And LBL was one place where I realized that was not a good idea.
Yeah, we was going to ask you after we got off the show what predator call you recommended.
Yeah. Show me on the map where they almost touched you.
Dying rabbit will get you an interesting response. And I did it. And if you look on the map, look for Demumbers Bay. I pulled down to Demumbers Bay and I used the dying rabbit call, and I got almost an immediate response.
He almost got it.
All right.
Yeah. I had the sudden realization that, one, I was too far from my vehicle, and two, I was drastically underarmed for the situation I'd put myself in.
Yeah. Well.
Yep, I think Ginger hit the nail on the head. There's secrets in the national forest that they want to keep secret.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Well,
boys, we are after the 2-hour mark, so we start winding things down. But I think we've had a great conversation tonight, talking about behaviors and different patterns and things we've noticed. And I think it's a good sharing of ideas. And Johnny, I appreciate you, man. You really give us a good perspective on stuff, because I'm used to Steve and Doc and Carrie. I can almost guess how they're going to answer a question based on previous experience. But I like having you here because you really kind of threw a curveball at us, and I liked it. You threw something new into the mix.
Well, I was trying to throw a knuckleball, but it turned into a curveball. So,
well, you know what Bob Euchre said about knuckleballs, right? Bob Euchre said the only way to successfully catch a knuckleball was let it hit the backstop and pick it up with your hand.
Sounds good.
I love Bob Euchre. He cracks me up. But folks, again, I'm going to reiterate this. There are no experts. And anybody that claims they know every behavior Bigfoot has or every sound they make and understand their language, they're full of it. They just straight up are full of it. Nobody knows. And people that claim otherwise are dangerous because they will tell you something. And if you go into the woods expecting it to be that way, you might not come back out of it. You have a right to come home safe. I'm not advocating hunting these things. I have no desire to hunt one. Yes, I go armed, but I go armed to defend myself and defend the people I'm with. I do not advocate hunting one. I don't want to be the guy that drags one in. I have no plans on shooting one unless I absolutely have to. And that'll be a life or death situation. One of us is about to get et before I'm going to shoot one. Mainly because I understand for every one you see, there's probably at least two you don't. So I don't want to get into that situation where I've got to match firepower with a clan of Bigfoot. Just don't want to do it. And I will never be the guy that wants to bring one in for science. I think we've got enough anecdotal evidence and DNA evidence to logically argue that these creatures exist. But again, there are no experts in the field, and anybody that tells you otherwise is selling something. Just remember, any people that make these fantastic claims that they're a member of 7 Bigfoot tribes and speak 6 Bigfoot languages and they know every vocalization in backwoods, yet they can never have a picture, they never have anything but their word. With great claims comes great requirements of proof. If you can't back it up, you're probably doing more damage to the field than you are good. Every picture of a bush is not a Bigfoot. I could go out in my backyard right now, crouch down by the honeysuckle bush, and take a picture of the honeysuckle bush, knowing full damn well there is a house 30 yards on the other side of that bush. Put a couple red circles on it and throw it in a group under a different name, and there'll be 25 people swear there's 6 Bigfoot in that picture. It happens all the time. Yeah, a couple dinosaurs and a flying purple snake bird, and Puff the Magic Dragon. Pareidolia sometimes is just pareidolia, folks. Don't believe everything with a red circle around it, because if you take any picture of the woods and zoom in on it enough, your mind will start picking patterns out. That's why I'm very suspect about most photographic evidence. Yeah, I presented a photo tonight of a track I took, but it is absolutely crystal clear what I took a picture of. I didn't, point at a spot on the ground and draw a red circle on it and say, there's a track there. If you don't see it, you're an idiot. No, there's definitely a track there. So yeah, take any picture evidence with a grain of salt. Hell, take it with a bucket of salt, because there are a lot of people out there that are just drawing red circles around pictures of trees and expecting everybody to believe them when they see there's 65 Bigfoot hanging in that one tree.
Yep. And that's the main thing, folks. What we're trying to say is draw your own conclusions. Don't base your opinions on what somebody else has said. Look at something. If you don't see it, don't be afraid to say, I don't see it. Because, we've had people get bullied because they say, I don't see what you're talking about. And there's nothing wrong with that. If I show you a picture and you say, I don't see it, that's not my right to get mad at you because you can't see what I want you to see. It is what it is. If you can't see, if you can't see the footprint in the picture that DA showed, then, you can't see it.
Exactly.
There's no DA, and I don't have a right to get mad at you if you can't see that that's a footprint. It's just, it is what it is. If you see it, great. If you don't,
Yeah, I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah.
When we took pictures of those tracks we saw and the toe slips and all that, I was there, saw it in real time, watched him take the picture. The next 5 minutes later, looked at the picture and I couldn't see it.
Yeah.
But I saw it in real time. But
and
I
it's
couldn't
funny
see it.
how sometimes the photo will fail to grasp what you're actually looking at. And that's why I say, if you're going to take photos of evidence, take as many pictures as you possibly can from multiple different angles, above, from either side, from in front of it, from the back. Because digital images don't cost you a thing. I would rather have 35 images of the same footprint than one that shows you nothing.
Yeah.
Yep. And, that goes to some of the stuff we said about just, if you're going to go do this kind of stuff, if you want to do this, you want to go out prepared, have something to put in there for scale, if you're wanting, because how many times we've been out TA and God dang it, well, you ain't got nothing to cast it with. I mean, and it's just one of those things. That's, Johnny and I sat down months ago when we started planning this, and we was like, okay, what do we need? We need this. We need this. And, we just gradually started putting, and there's still probably going to be stuff we get out there. We're like, dang it, we forgot this.
Exactly. It's always that way. I mean, you can't ever be completely prepared.
But don't just go. I mean, go obviously, but don't just go and think, I'll decide what I need when I get there. Have a plan. Make sure somebody knows where you're going. Try not to go alone. Yeah, and when you're going to be back. But just go. You're never going to find anything if you don't go. So if you ever want to go out looking for these things, just do it. Don't sit there and one day we be at the point where, man, I wish I'd went out and experienced that. Because even if you don't find anything, you're going to have fun just being out in nature looking for this stuff. I mean, that's half the fun of it.
Just getting out in the woods is always a good time.
And
Mary
right,
Cole
just-
says, "Have y'all seen ads for the new Sasquatch movie?" I have not. What's it called? I'm always up
Yeah,
for
I
a good
hadn't either.
Sasquatch movie.
I saw a terrible movie the other night with Elliot in it, Bill Elliott,
Mhm.
the man who killed Hitler, then Bigfoot.
Oh my
Sam
God,
Elliott,
that
yeah.
movie sucked. That movie
That was
was
terrible.
2 hours of my life I'll never get back.
Exactly.
I was gonna watch the movie until DA said, "Nah, don't even worry about it."
Watched
This
it
got
because it had Sam
Elliott.
Elliott in it, and I expected it to be good.
Yes.
That's what he told me. He said, "Nah, Sam Elliott didn't even save it." I'm like, "Okay, if Sam Elliott didn't save it, then."
Yeah.
It can't
Definitely
be
a
saved.
turn in the punch bowl.
Yeah. But folks, again, no experts in this field. Form your own opinions. Take anything we say with a grain of salt. Hell, take it with a bucket of salt, because we don't know for sure. We're just putting out theories and ideas. But anybody that claims they know is probably full of it. There are no experts in this field. Nobody knows for sure. But unless they can back it up, I would take anything that anybody tries to present as fact as highly dubious at best. Unless they can back it up, they're just blowing smoke. And we will back up everything that we claim by presenting what we found, and we've got nothing to hide. So, until science admits these things exist, all we have is conjecture and theory, and your guys' opinion and ideas are just as good as ours, because we don't know either. We're looking at what makes the most logical sense and trying to form our theories from there, and that's all any of us can do.
Yep, 100%.
Robbie, you want to tell us a little bit about what's really out there before we jump off here?
Yep. What's really out there is the show Johnny and I do that we like to jokingly call Ex Machina Light. If you like this show, you'll probably like our show. Johnny and I talk about pretty much most of the same stuff we talk about here. Our show we just did was on AI.
Yes.
Our last show that we just recorded, we did on how AI is affecting, some of our, the pictures and the videos and things we see, about how it's really hard to trust any photos, especially, and videos that you see. We usually go about 30, 45 minutes, somewhere around in there.
Yeah, ish.
Yeah. We're 486 subscribers now, so we're getting close to that 500 milestone. So if any of y'all out there hadn't subscribed yet, please go ahead and subscribe. Get us up to that 500 mark. We're almost there. We've got 49 episodes, I think, now.
Yes.
Right, we're right close to the 50 episode mark. I think you'll like it. Any of you hadn't, I think Miss Lene just put it up on the chat. Find us on YouTube, Spotify, Spreaker, all that kind of stuff. But subscribe to us on YouTube if you can, because that's where the platform we're really pushing. We're going to be live Saturday night, but we're going to video most of our stuff, and then we're going to hopefully have our first video episode based on what we're doing down here this week. So y'all go check us out. Get to hear me and Johnny talk more stuff.
Definitely come check us out.
Yep.
Roxanne says, I think the movie is
Roxanne
called
said
Sasquatch Sunset.
Yeah.
I'll have to check that out. I'll see if I can find it. Folks, thank you guys for hanging out with us. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel. It helps the channel continue to grow and to get us out there a little farther. Because according to the algorithm, we're not fully subscribed. About 40% of the people that watch the shows are still not subscribed to the channel. So please take a moment, hit that like, share, and subscribe. Doesn't cost you a thing. we would love to have you as part of the DA Ex MachiNation. We're kind of at the time of the night where we're winding things down, and what I always like to talk about is the 22 a Day Foundation. We lose 22 veterans a day to suicide, and that is 22 too many. Robbie's a first responder. I was a first responder in Army. Doc was an Air Force flight medic. Steve is a first responder. We've all worn our time in uniform. What's that?
Johnny's in the Army.
Johnny's in the Army. So we've all done our times in uniform, and we all know those guys that have seen too much, and we've all been there. We've all had to deal with our own demons, and sometimes life just gets overwhelming. So check on your friends that are first responders or veterans or even still in, because you never know when your "Hey fucker, are you okay?" text at 2:00 in the morning is what pulls them back off the edge. Let them know you're thinking about them. Let them know you care, because 22 a day is entirely too many. That is 22 too many to be point of fact. And sometimes it's the guys that you would never suspect are the ones that really need to be checked on the most, because we've all fought those demons. And I'm not too proud to admit I've had a pretty rough time over the last couple of weeks, considering everything that life's thrown my way in the last month. Not thinking anything stupid, mind you, just been dealing with a lot of stress. And I'm glad I've got such a good group of guys that I can text and say, "Hey, what are you guys doing?" or talk Bigfoot with, or you won't even have to talk about anything important. Just knowing somebody's there that cares. So, again, keep an eye on those folks that have served in any capacity, because sometimes the demons win. And 22 times a day the demons win, and that, again, 22 times too many. Check out the Till Valhalla project. Everything that they raise goes right back into helping veterans. They buy service dogs and artificial limbs and help get veterans get counseling. Till Valhalla project is to me one of the best out there. So definitely check them out. They're a big supporter of the 22 a Day Foundation. So, thank you guys for thinking about that, and thanks for hearing me out on that. But we're going to wrap the show up with a toast. It's something we've been doing for a while, and it's something I want to continue to do. And I'm very proud that we're doing this. I love this toast. It's from an old Irish drinking song called "The Parting Glass." And the song is played at Irish pubs all over the world at the end of the night when people are heading home. It's generally last call, the song they play. But it's not just about that. If you check out the lyrics, if you listen to the song, it's more about raising a glass to those that we don't have with us anymore, those that cannot, be with us to raise the glass with us, the ones we've lost along the way. And if you guys would join me in the toast, I don't care what you got, just raise a glass of water, milk, tea, something stronger, whatever you're drinking. But just raise a glass with me as we end the show on one of my favorite quotes from The Parting Glass. And the quote says this: "But since it fell into my lot that I should rise and you should not, I'll gently rise and softly call. Good night, and joy be to you all." Good night, everyone.
Thank you for joining us. Catch us again Wednesdays and Saturdays on DA Ex Machina. A special thanks to all our channel members and Patreon supporters. Please make sure to like, share, and subscribe.